Hello folks, my name is Mark and this is Why I Hate the World. How you guys doing? So there's been a lot of stories in the news lately about fake news, which if you don't know what that is, it's there's these parody sort of fake news sites out there that have like outlandish news stories, and they prey on people who don't fact check things and make a lot of money through ad revenue when you share it on Facebook or something like that. And they'll usually be set up in such a way to actually look like like it's an actual real news site, and it'll have a name like that's pretty close to something that you would expect to be respectable. So for example, the Denver Guardian is one, or another one is abcnews.colorado.co. And people get taken in by these phony news stories. For example, one of them that I saw was a story that claimed that it was legal in Colorado to use food stamps to pay for marijuana. Right? Another one was an FBI agent connected to the Hillary Clinton Foundation email scandal investigation was found in a apparent murder-suicide or whatever. Both of those things didn't happen. Both of those are completely made up. And but this sort of cycling of really this fake news kind of thing, it sort of helped to elevate Trump during the election. And in fact, HuffPost did an article on it where they went and they tracked down one of the guys who runs one of these sites, and he was saying that he makes somewhere in the area of $10,000 to $30,000 a month from this, and most of the stories he makes target conservatives. Right. The reason being is that they never fact check anything. So he would make a few that would target liberals, right? And it would get posted one or two times, and then somebody would debunk it in the comments and saying this isn't true, right? But conservatives would never fact check, so they would just share his story, a million times, and he'd make all this money. And it's like, right. Now, why is that exactly? And I think it's because the conservative news has always been the fake news. It started back in the 80s, right, when Reagan got rid of the Fairness Doctrine. Like a lot of people don't remember that back in the day before that was removed, if you were a news outlet, you had to give both sides of the story. So if you did a conservative, commentator show, you had to follow that up by a liberal commentator show with the exact same time, the exact same amount of time devoted to each. And that's why we used to have shows like, back in the day, like Crossfire kind of thing, where they'd have one guy saying it and the other guy saying it, and, giving both sides of the story. And the actual news did its best to be objective because this was the law. So since the Fairness Doctrine was removed, that completely opened the door to allow bias to creep into the media officially, right? And it wasn't long before you got things like Rush Limbaugh, just feeding people lies, feeding people the GOP talking points, and not even trying to give the illusion of being, objective, right? You started seeing things like that, like commentator shows, without any news in them at all. Things like Fox News, for example, right? Which is just like, it's basically, Fox News was founded by Roger Ailes, who, he basically founded it as GOP TV, right? You can look that up. That's actually true shit. He wanted to have, during the Nixon administration, a network outlet to give the talking points for the GOP. That's what Fox News is, right? And then, now we have the internet, and we have things like Breitbart, right? Alex Jones, who started out on radio and now seems to be mainly on the internet, they're just completely out in right-wing wacky land, both of those things. WorldNet Daily, which is that's where the true crazies lie, right? And this kind of thing, they've been feeding conservatives just lies for decades, since like basically the fucking late 80s, And this is why conservatives, because of conservative media is so fucked up and biased and so lacking in truth, that's why, conservatives believe in things that are just demonstrably untrue. The whole black welfare queens thing. There's like zero truth to that. And it's a rumor, that came out of the Reagan administration where like, black people were having multiple babies, right, so that they can collect more money in welfare checks. And there's like zero truth to that at all. In fact, more white people are on welfare in the country than black people. Some other lies that they believe, trickle down economics works, right? Somehow that giving money to rich people means that poor people will benefit, which is like complete bullshit. Just doesn't work at all. The whole climate change denial thing, how they can just basically deny science, right? I mean, it's like that's something that was propagated by Fox News and all these people. Abstinence and sex education, all terror. It's not like things like that. Those big issues that they just use to spin. This is where they get their what passes for proof for these things. They get it from bullshit news, right? Fake news stories that comes out of conservative media, and it's not hard to jump from that kind of thing to, and to really just blatant racist lies about your opposition, and that's why during the Obama, years, we started getting things like, all terrorists are Muslim, Latino immigrants are all criminals and rapists, and they're going to steal your jobs. Obama is a Muslim terrorist who was born in Kenya, and his wife is a fucking transvestite. That's the thing, is that these that all sounds ridiculous to anybody that actually pays attention or like reads, but these crazy ideas are, they run rampant through conservative circles. Okay. And it's not, a large leap to go from believing shit like that to believing things like Hillary Clinton is running a fucking sex child dungeon out of a fucking pizza shop, right? And then people go nuts and they show up with a fucking gun and somebody gets killed, So that's the real problem with the fake news, right? And it's like, because it's not a new thing, okay? It's been going on for decades now, and it's just like, that's the real problem. The real problem is now we have a president-elect who actually believes this shit. Okay. Rush Limbaugh went on Alex Jones' show after he won the election and congratulated him, right? For, thanks for helping me get elected and shit like that. And, he's actually believing this shit. He believes the lizard people shit, right? He believes that there's like cabals of Jewish bankers running the fucking country, right? He believes that the government has, X-ray machines and they're going to spy on you through walls, and that, there's secret rings of devil worshipping pedophiles who eat children out in Washington, right? It's absolutely ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's no wonder that everyone else in the world thinks America's so fucking stupid, and now we've elected a goddamn president we've elected a president who's a fucking conspiratard, right? God help us all. Adios, folks.